The big story today, of course, has been the final journey of DMK patriarch M Karunanidhi. There were a sea of people, literally thousands and thousands of people that had lined up to watch his funeral procession as it went from the Rajaji Hall in Chennai, where it was laid there since early this morning for people to come and pay their last respects, to the 2-kilometer journey to the final resting place. Prime Minister Modi, Rahul Gandhi, a number of political leaders cutting across party lines went there to pay homage. But ultimately, it was those pictures of ordinary people, especially DMK workers and others who had lined up for hours and hours to pay their last respects that really stood out. Mr. Karunanidhi, of course, was a 5-time chief minister. He had won all the 13 assembly elections he contested. He was the patriarch, the chief of the DMK for 50 long years. So he leaves behind quite an incredible legacy.
Not just a party president. He is a 100 years history of Tamil Nadu and 100 years history of social justice in Tamil Nadu.
அப்பா வந்து கொஞ்சம் நெஞ்ச செய்யலமா, கண்ணு இல்லாதவங்களுக்கு கண்ணாடி கொடுத்தாரு, கால் இல்லாதவங்களுக்கு வண்டி கொடுத்தாரு, கையிறச்சா ஏத்தவங்களுக்கு சைக்கிள் வச்சா கொடுத்தாருமா.
நான் மீண்டும் இந்த கால்களை தொட்டு மிகுந்த பணியோடு கேட்கிறேன். ஒரு அமைதியாக நீங்கள் கடந்து சென்றால்தான் இறுதி பயணம் அது அமைதியாக நடைபெற வேண்டும் என்று சொன்னால்
So some incredible scenes there from M Karunanidhi's funeral today, and earlier we saw some very ugly politics playing out from the moment that M Karunanidhi died yesterday evening, because the state government had said that it could not allot land at the memorial site at the Marina Beach, which is what his family wanted, because that land was involved in some kind of legal tussle. It was immediately something that led to a political backlash. There were opposition parties, other parties that reacted to this, saying that this was extremely petty. The DMK ended up taking the case to the court, and so there was a midnight hearing and then a hearing early this morning, and finally the court had to intervene, and it did allow Karunanidhi to be laid to rest at Marina.
Even Stalin, normally reserved, could not contain his emotions as news came this morning that his father would be allowed burial on Chennai's Marina Beach. News that drew a cheer for the thousands keeping vigil besides their late leader. The breakthrough for the DMK came after a tense court hearing that ran well into the night. Then after a break, it resumed this morning. The Tamil Nadu government had claimed multiple lawsuits prevented them from offering a space on Marina Beach. Instead, they proposed a plot near a memorial dedicated to Mahatma Gandhi. The petitions, however, were withdrawn soon after the hearing resumed. The ruling party also said only chief ministers who died in office has memorials at Marina Beach. There's no such law the DMK shot back, asserting that it would be an insult if their leader was not buried near his mentor, C.N. Annadurai. The court finally ruled in favor of the DMK, directing officials to adhere to the rough sketch given by the party. DMK spokesperson's alleged vendetta.
The stand taken by the government is pure vendetta, as it was evident by the order. They said some cases were pending, those cases were withdrawn. When there is no embargo on those cases, how can you go ahead and not allot the place sought for by Dr. Kalaignar?
The Congress went a step further, claiming that the state government was acting in collusion with the BJP. But the Tamil Nadu government denied this.
I don't think there's any intent the state government had to create any problem for this whole process, in our view.
The final resting place will match this diagram submitted by the DMK. M Karunanidhi laid to rest in a thin strip of land measuring 6 feet next to his mentor Annadurai and his political rival J. Jayalalitha. In Chennai with Karupaswamy and Suresh, Sam Daniel, for NDTV.
Well, Mr. Karunanidhi wasn't just a towering figure in Tamil Nadu politics, he was a towering figure in national politics. His party had a key role to play in key alliances over the decades. And that's why tonight we're talking about what his political legacy is and what happens to politics in Tamil Nadu, particularly under his son M.K. Stalin. Well, joining us tonight is Mr. N. Ram, the chairman of the Hindu Publishing Group. Sandhya Ravi Shankar is joining us tonight. She's an author who's written a biography on Mr. Karunanidhi. Here in the studio with us, we have Ami Yagnik, Rajya Sabha MP of the Congress Party, Mr. Sandeep Mahapatra, who's a member of the RSS, and we'll be joined shortly by Mr. Chandan Mitra, now senior leader of the Trinamool Congress. Mr. Ram, to you first. Finally, thankfully, after the kind of petty politics that we saw played out in the last 24 hours or so, would you say that this was then a fitting tribute that was paid to M Karunanidhi today? Just the sheer number of people who came out to pay their last respects really stood out.
Yes, extraordinary scenes as shown in your channel. I happened to be in London, so I couldn't really be there to pay my respects. But extraordinary scenes. Kalaignar's life was one of struggle, and in a sense, this last struggle after he died was against stupidity, not just pettiness, against political stupidity of the worst kind. All kinds of ridiculous objections were raised. There was no restraining order. There was no interim order standing in the way of what Kalaignar wanted, what people wanted for him, what his family wanted, what masses in Tamil Nadu wanted. A small place, not a new memorial, right next to where he wished, Annadurai's memorial, and that's where he wished to be buried. And that beautiful epitaph, which has been reported, which has been shown, a man who worked ceaselessly is now resting in peace here. That was his own words. He wanted that, and I think it's fitting. But extraordinary stupidity on the part of the state government and all those who were backing this. And I don't know why the chief secretary had to hide behind the chief secretary to issue a ridiculous statement when every lawyer in the country knew that there was no restraining order. I think the High Court, Madras High Court, did very well. Apart from being sound in law, I think they took public sentiment into account, and I think we owe gratitude to the Madras High Court, the higher judiciary, for doing the right thing and in time. The late night hearing and the resumption in the morning, I think they knew it. And when
Absolutely.
the counsel for the government said, you can't rush through it, I think I read that the judge asked, the acting Chief Justice asked sarcastically, you want an adjourn for a week? That was the attitude of the state government. Those are the instructions the lawyers were given. But I can't believe that somebody in office could be so unwise, so stupid.
But it is something that I think that will also have political ramifications. And I want to ask Mr. Mahapatra here about that would you say, looking back, that this was a colossal mistake by the state government, and this is something that potentially does have the potential to to backfire on the AIADMK.
Look, I don't know why AIADMK did that. I am not a spokesperson for the AIADMK. But having said that, I would also like to point out the kind of political mileage that is being sought to be gained by people like the Congress party's president. He is bringing in the name of everybody, including the BJP and the RSS. And I am made to wonder that not years back in 1996 or late 90s, P.V. Narasimha Rao, one of our former Prime Minister, was denied a space where people could come and have a darshan of his dead body in 24 Akbar Road. So, the kind of politics that is being played out, I would request everyone not to politicize this issue. The High Court has already decided this issue.
You're saying it's hypocrisy on the Congress's part?
Yes, that's what I am saying, because the High Court has already ruled, and whether or not the AIADMK took a good decision or bad decision, it is for the AIADMK to justify. But to politicize it, and there are many statements which came out in the Twitter and in Facebook that it was in collusion with the powers that be in Delhi, and somebody took the name of RSS also.
That's because Mr. Gurumurthy apparently made a statement saying that he should not be buried at Marina.
No, Mr. Gurumurthy, he has issued out a statement that he was providing a rationale. He may be wrong in his rationale which he was providing, but the fact remains that the RSS has never said anything in this. And therefore, to drag in the RSS's name and politicize this issue, like the Congress party president has been used to doing everything in the name of RSS, it should be avoided at this particular point in time.
Ami Yagnik, you want to respond to that? Is there a double standard here that the Congress did not give that respect to P.V. Narasimha Rao and therefore today is in no position to preach on how Karunanidhi should be treated?
I think this kind of blaming and all the time taking incidents from the past and comparing, but never giving justification of their action which whichever party has done, I think it's not going to stand too long now in politics also, because any time you show, this is a very emotional moment, it's touching the hearts of the people of the state, and if someone has said or if the Congress party has pointed out something, I think it's a time for introspection rather than putting the blame and all the time going in history and not even looking at what you contributed in history. So we may not go to that aspect, but the fact remains that here we have a life which has been practically, anyone can envy this political journey of Karunanidhi ji, and it was a time when it was a last, I think it was the issue which could have never have gone to the courts at such a time, and so well there would be reactions and responses from all quarters of the country. Why only Congress? From everybody. And so instead of doing the usual which they always do, that at a particular point of time in history the Congress did not do this and did not allow this, but they never do introspection and they try to lead the people of the country astray. So that is what I would like to point out, that was a moment when this could have been avoided.
Well, let me get Sandhya Ravi Shankar in and let's talk about the kind of politics that Karunanidhi stood for. Sandhya Ravi Shankar, does this truly mark the end of, as some people are saying, the Dravidian era in Tamil politics, or is that there to stay even if Jayalalitha and Karunanidhi are not there? How should we look at the future?
Dravidianism is, as of now, simply a word, and I think the DMK, starting from Annadurai downwards, have all ensured that they have diluted the core ideals of the Dravidian movement. But having said that, there is certainly a sense that of a unique Tamil identity, a unique Tamil pride that people in the state feel, and I'm pretty sure that politicians who succeed Jayalalitha and Karunanidhi and MJR are most certainly going to tap into that in order to further their electoral mileage. But what next in terms of Tamil Nadu politics? Well, I can say one thing for sure, and that this is the end. This is, we've seen the end of an era of mass leaders, and I think it's going to be a very long time before Tamil Nadu finds another mass leader like Karunanidhi or MGR or even Jay.
Well, that's interesting. So you don't see, for instance, someone like Rajnikant, even with his massive film, fan following, or even Kamal Hassan, as people who could fill that gap, or are these just shoes that are too big to fill?
These definitely are shoes that are too big to fill, but also remember the times have changed. Karunanidhi, MGR and Jayalalitha they sort of rose to this kind of, demigod status during an era when the medium of communication was only through cinema, mass communication, that is. And now we have social media, we have WhatsApp, we have all kinds of things. We have television channels beaming all kinds of things all over the place. So, demigods, the demigods have suddenly got clay feet. So they're not beyond criticism, they're not beyond critique. And that is, in fact, a very important thing for democracy. And I think that would be Karunanidhi's legacy to Tamil Nadu, because he stood for democracy. And if democracy does, continue and, go further and flourish in Tamil Nadu, I think that would be Karunanidhi's legacy fulfilled.
Well, interesting, though I have to say that I think demigod status still exists in some political parties. But having said that jibe aside, we have Mr. Chandan Mitra, who's of course now a leader of the Trinamool Congress and still very much an editor, joining us this evening. Mr. Mitra, you would have covered Karunanidhi's political career as a journalist, certainly for all these decades. We were just talking about whether someone like Rajnikanth or Kamal Haasan could fill those shoes. What do you think? Do you think that the future of Tamil Nadu politics lies with people like Kamal Haasan or Rajnikanth, or these are just very untested waters?
Well, you see, all the big leaders in Tamil Nadu, after all, became such dominant personalities and icons, one can say, on the basis of the organizational structure of the respective parties. Whether it's Annadurai or it was followed by Karunanidhi, and even when he broke away, MGR built his own party, Jayalalitha inherited that party. So the party support, the organization, mattered a great deal in the making of these icons. In the absence of any party, as of now, I think newcomers, although they are very popular leaders and popular film stars, will find it difficult to attain that status to fill the vacuum left behind by the demise of all the towering personalities in Tamil politics.
Okay, and therefore that brings me to the question, Mr. Ram, that what kind of a leader do you think that M.K. Stalin would be? Because this is an interesting time in Tamil Nadu politics. The AIADMK is in quite a mess. The DMK, if it plays its cards right, could really sort of come back to power in the state, if it, as I said, plays its cards right, and Stalin shows that he has that leadership potential. Do you think that he can fill his father's shoes?
Yes, I think the DMK is in a very good place, and because a succession plan was put in place, and M.K. Stalin has worked. He's a tried, experienced leader. He's really worked from the bottom. I recall that during the emergency, he was not only detained under Misa, but brutally beaten. He withstood all that, and I think has worked hard. And I agree with Chandan that organization is the key. And the others, there is a certain amount of uncertainty about the prospects of some of the others, the newcomers. But the strength of the DMK, and earlier DMK, now badly fragmented and weakened, I think. The strength of the DMK is its organizational strength. Its cadres, you could see many of them there, and it's.
Unfortunately, that signal with Mr. Ram has frozen. I will get back to that in just a moment. But Sandeep Mahapatra, let's talk a bit about some of the lasting contributions Mr. Karunanidhi made. One of them was, of course, really championing the cause of states, federalism, etc. He really pushed for states' rights. And that's something that really seems to make sense when you look at where our politics has evolved today.
If you ask me, his prime contribution would be that he headed a party for 5 decades. And if I am not wrong, DMK would be one of the oldest party in today's Indian history. And while heading the party, he built the party from scratch, and he has set out a template as to how to build a party and how to run a political party. And I read somewhere that he used to spend nights in the open grounds with his cadres. He used to eat with his cadres. So that is the template for the new generation leaders. And in terms of federalism, yes, he was the first voice. If we remember 1967, the Congress was uprooted from Tamil Nadu, and it has been more than 50 years that Congress has not made a comeback. So he has, in another way, set templates for regional parties. If you would see the 60s, 70s and 80s, and even in 90s, were the era where the regional parties cropped up. But it was DMK which stood the test of time. Many parties came and went by, but because of his organizational skills, DMK stood the ground. And in terms of federalism, though he was in alliance with the Congress in 1969-71, he opposed emergency in 75 and had to pay a price. And later on, we know his role that he played in the United Front government, in the National Front government, and other government. Yeah. And the contribution that I would see is that he established Tamil Nadu and Tamil Nadu politicians in Delhi Darbar as we see today. And Tamil Nadu gained political prominence and national prominence thanks to the role that he played. So definitely he has contributed in terms of strengthening the democracy. Leave apart the controversies that erupted in DMK because of the 2G and other scams. But yes, on a whole, it's six decades of political life as a legislator, 13 times he won uninterrupted. He has contributed immensely, and in today's day and time when he has passed away, we must remember the contribution that he has made.
But Ami Yagnik, would you say, agree with Sandhya Ravishankar here that the era of mass leaders in that sense is over, maybe with some exceptions though?
Yeah, I think she's made a very fine observation as far as this thing, because she also has given a reason that there was a single kind of a medium at that time, and the times were different. But with so much change in all the connectivity, I would say, and with every individual, I think there is some kind of a mindset that has also changed towards the concept of leadership.
But Narendra Modi is very much a mass leader. Mamata Banerjee is very much a mass
yes,
leader.
But I think they have carved a niche for themselves in a certain way. So, but the mass leadership you are talking about as far as Karunanidhi ji is concerned, or Jayalalitha ji is concerned, it came from a certain kind of a background. You talk about films, that. But these are leaders who are taken as mass leaders, but I don't know where this mass leadership is originating. You can't extend it to that particular kind of a particular field from which we are making a comparison to these three top leaders. So mass leaders, I think mass leadership is based on several factors these days. When you have taken the examples of these two leaders, each one has his own or her own way of becoming a leader. But I think we are translating that leadership into, I mean, connecting it to the political results. I think let's see over a couple of years, because it's just in the kind of, I would say, a different kind of a nascent stage.
Well, Mr. Mitra, if I could ask you, if you were to look at what is happening to Tamil Nadu's politics now, what do you see the future as? I mean, as Mr. Ram rightly pointed out, the AIADMK is much weakened today. The DMK is in a position to be much stronger. Everyone else is really not a player. Do you think that M.K. Stalin, and I asked this question to Sandhya Ravishankar earlier, is going to be able to uphold the values that his father talked about and really champion those? She's skeptical. What do you think?
Well, I'll go along with Mr. Ram when he said that there's no reason why Mr. Stalin cannot emerge as a very strong and effective leader. He has held administrative positions before. He has the organizational backing. So I don't think that what Mr. Ram said, Mr. Stalin will definitely emerge as supremo in the DMK, and ADMK is in a state of kind of disarray at the moment. If they get their act together, well and good. But at the moment, I think definitely DMK has advantage is DMK, especially after today's emotional outburst and what's been going on for the last few days. I think Mr. Karunanidhi's popularity actually has, in a sense, peaked and should help his party to carry on and go forward from here. I think you are right that I don't think other parties are matter very much, and even in alliance, national parties have never been able to make that kind of mark in Tamil Nadu. So I think for the present is one of the two Dravidian parties in which DMK is at an advantage.
Well, certainly interesting times there as far as Tamil Nadu politics is concerned, national politics as well. All of this has a bearing on everything that happens at the centre too. Thank you to all of you for joining us tonight on a day that the nation bid farewell to M Karunanidhi. Well